This episode of the AFTN Soccer Show is brought to you by Recovery Family Law. Recovery Family Law is here to help you solve your family law problems. If you are going through a separation or divorce, they can provide you the confidence to make good decisions and support to enforce your rights. If you have a question about property, children or support, they have the answers. It's not too late or too early to get help. Email info@recoveryfamilylaw.ca or visit recoveryfamilylaw.ca and let their team get you excellent results.
Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers, away from the numbers.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. And there's still time. The AFTN Soccer Show, broadcasting on CITR Radio, 101.9 FM from the unceded Musqueam Territory at the University of beautiful British Columbia. I'm Michael McCall.
And I'm Felipe Vallejo.
And again, no Zach this week. Zach, I think, feels that he doesn't have the mental capacity anymore to do the podcast, so he has stepped down, and vice co-host Felipe has stepped up into the role. So welcome.
Thank you. I did not know I got a promotion. Wow, this is first I hear of it.
Zach is actually just away back in Ontario again. He's spending more time out there than he is back here these days. I don't think he's got a VFC game to take in this time, though, as well. It's just for other matters. So Zach will be on the show soon. I can't speak about his mental capacity, though. He did enjoy my introduction to the show last week, though, he mentioned, Felipe. He was sitting, I won't say where he was sitting, but he was sitting in a room of strangers, listening, and then just burst out in one of his typical guffaws, and folk were just looking at him very strangely.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, so
Because then
let's
you have no
just see if he
context.
does it again when he listens to this week's show. But yeah, we are back for another show. We're going to be talking mostly Whitecaps in the show because there's a lot to talk about. We'll talk MLS, roster rule changes, what that might mean to the Whitecaps. We'll look at the two games they've had this past week, a win and a defeat. We'll also talk a little bit about League One, CPL, maybe throw in a little bit of national team chat and stuff as well. Before we get into all that though, Felipe, how has your week been?
Good. Busy, which is
You're a very busy lad at the moment.
yeah, with so many midweek games with the Whitecaps, CPL's, continuing in full flow. Though right now the schedule is being pretty weird in terms of how many the teams play in a match week, which is kind of difficult to keep up with. But yeah, no, it's great, and the League One BC as well. The playoffs are coming, so there's a lot of football on offer before, more things happen in terms of the Olympics that start, I believe, on Wednesday. So there's even more sports to watch and follow. So busy, but enjoying it very much, and then looking forward to my mini vacation going back home to Ontario on Wednesday.
Everyone's gone to Ontario. Maybe it really is the center of the universe. It's just drawing everyone to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest, if it wasn't for my family and my friends all being there, I would try to convince more people to come over here because it's much better environment here than it is where I'm from in Ontario.
Yeah. Are you going to get to see any games when you're out there?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to go see a Forge game, tread on my old hunting grounds there, and then maybe see. I've never gone to go see a York game, so I'm gonna see if I can go see a York United game. I was thinking maybe go to Toronto FC game, but I don't know if I want to waste my money on that right now. So perhaps I'll just stick it to the CPL.
Yeah, I would just do that the way that they're currently playing. But we're going to talk Whitecaps in this part, and it was a two-game week for the Whitecaps at home. Both games after their long road trip is over. A win against Sporting Kansas City on Wednesday, a defeat against Houston at the weekend. Continuing the mixed form at home, which we'll get into in this part. We'll look a little bit at both games. The KC one we won't delve too much into because it was further away. I missed this one though, Felipe, because my dog was in for a dental cleaning, and then it turned out she had to get a tooth removed, and we weren't able to pick her up and then get home until after 7. And I just had to monitor her and stuff as well. So I couldn't leave the little pup. Next day she was totally fine. So I'm pretty sure I could have left her. So I watched it from home.
Mm.
And it's always a weird feeling watching games at BC Place at home and not being there. But it was a big 3 points for the Whitecaps. I feel both these games I had pegged as must win for different reasons. KC won. They're playing a team not in the playoff spots, not been in the best of form, but had started to turn things around. They made it more difficult for themselves, that I felt, than they needed to, but they came away with the big 3 points in the end.
Yeah, I think that, Vanny talked about afterwards that the Whitecaps, specifically in the first half, were playing champagne football, and I have to agree. Just the way that they began, that was some of the best football that we had seen from them in a while. They were playing with a lot of confidence. They were playing with a lot of focus. The passes were slick, the touches were good up until the final ball. And then that felt like that was just a little bit too rushed, specifically Ali Ahmed, he was a split second too late in releasing the ball, and then two of the goals that went in that were called off for offside. They could have been, legal goals had he been able to pass a little bit quicker, but still, aside from the final pass and the final product, really, really good goal overall. Really funny with Brian White on the own goal there, because you could very clearly see, you don't have to be a proficient lip reader to see his joking frustration that he didn't get to
Yes.
tap that one in. But yeah, first half was really, really good. There was just a little bit of a dread that I always feel whenever I watch any game with a team that I'm, supporting or looking to, where they do really well and they create a lot of chances, but they can't put the ball away, because that has a lot of psychological weight to it for both teams, because it kind of gives a little bit of anxiety for the team that's dominating of, well, when are we going to score? When are we going to actually finish these chances off? And it gives hope to the team that is getting dominated that they can come back. And I feel like that's exactly what happened in the second half. SKC made 3 changes at halftime, and that made all the difference. And for the first 20 minutes of the second half, it was all SKC. And when they finally scored, it was nothing less than they deserved.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with you and Vanny, but it was a great first half. It was one of the best first halves, free flowing football that we've seen at BC Place. And like you, at half time, I had a little concern that they hadn't put the game to bed. And we've spoken about that in previous games, that they could have been more out of sight at half time, and they certainly could have been. Just a little bit here and there, as you said, with the passes and stuff. But those changes that Vermees made at half time were fantastic. And it really revitalized the team. Tommy, in particular, was excellent when he came on, and they added some spark. And the goal, I think if Volador hadn't slid in, White was going to tuck it away. The equaliser, though, it was another one where the shot comes in, Takaoka parries it away, and it just falls favourably for Agada. I mean, the rebound could have gone anywhere, but it falls right in front of Agada, in front of goal. And he's got the time, he's got the space, there's no one around him, which is, I don't know, can you blame that on the zonal marking or not? Or was it just, did Utvik not maybe react quickly enough? Hard to
I
say.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I would say that maybe it's a little bit of both. I think Takaoka did well again to react to that. A Trivela shot is always a little bit difficult because it's curling away from you. So from your initial reaction, from your initial kind of assessment, and the ball you think might be going, a yard away from you, but actually it's curling a yard and a half. So you have to do kind of like compensate mid-flight. That being said, I think Takaoka probably would have wanted to maybe push it out further wide, less into direct danger, and more either out, behind the line, so it goes out for a corner, or just push it towards the corner flag more. But I think, yeah, Udvik probably should have reacted a little bit quicker. I feel like it was Ranko Veselinovic talked about it. It was a sleepy first half or
Mm,
first part to the second half
mm.
there, and I felt like that kind of goal kind of encapsulated that, where players could have reacted a little bit quicker, not even just, on the shot, but before when the play was in development, players could have reacted a little bit quicker to be able to get the ball out and get a foot in before that shot goes off. So yeah, it kind of just showed that the players weren't fully up to snuff at that point, and I think the goal definitely woke them back up.
Yeah, I think I had said in my headline it's like they woke out, came out of their slumber, and then after that things did pick up a little bit. It kind of felt though that the winner for the Caps came from nothing, really, because I was worried that if anyone was going to get the next goal the way the half had gone, it was going to be KC. But absolutely fantastic ball sent in by Sebastian Berhalter, pinpoint right onto the head of Fafa Picault, who's a man in good form just now, as we'll talk more about in the show. And he just rose superbly to head home what proved to be the winner in the 76th minute.
Yeah, it was a fantastic goal. I mean, that one is definitely gonna go in the highlight reel, just because of the way that went. And just, Vanny said that it was like a David Beckham-esque cross from Sebastian Berhalter, which I think that it's actually pretty on par for what he used to do back in the day. And it curled perfectly right to the back post. And Fafa could honestly, like, with such a good ball, you can sort of do nothing but at least put that on goal. And he did really well to kind of throw his head forward, get a really clean connection on it, and thrash it into the back of the net. And really good for Fafa too, because I think it was just minutes beforehand he had another really good opportunity. I think it was Luis Martins that crossed it in, and he kind of tried to jump, and I don't know if he was trying to chest it or shoulder it, but it kind of just like snuck between his waist, even though he was 3 yards out, and just went right by him. So glad for him that he was able to kind of find instant redemption there and be able to get that into the back of the net. And I think that really showcases Fafa right now, is just even if he misses opportunities, he's willing to keep going and keep trying, and then he'll score the second or the third one.
And it's something that the Whitecaps are needing is other players to step up and get the goals that aren't Brian White because he's been kind of doing so much of the scoring off late. Just as with Ryan Gauld, you need players to step up and do the creative and send those balls in. And the last couple of games, we've seen Laborda send a couple of brilliant crosses in, Berhalter sending a couple of brilliant crosses in. So many of them coming in from the right as well, which is quite interesting. But the delivery has been absolutely perfect, and it's great to see the players finishing the chances. So it was a deserved win, I think, in the end, because just how the first half went and then the amount of chances that they had, I think it was a good win. It was a deserved win. It was a much needed win because after being on the road, picking up the 7 points from the three games, you don't want to then come home and drop any points to a team that's outside the playoff spots. And then that set things up lovely for Saturday. I was very confident going into that game against Houston. I know Houston are a team that's been up and down. They've struggled in the years here at BC Place, although there's been high scoring games here. But on the whole, they haven't travelled well to here over the years. And I was pretty confident that the Whitecaps would come away with the 3 points. And this was another huge game because this time you are playing a team in the West that if you lose, which they did, you finish the weekend 1 point above them. If you win, you're talking a 7 point gap on a team that is going to be battling for the playoff spots. And you're really setting yourself up very strongly for returning after the League's Cup and in a great position in the league. Didn't quite play out that way though. And it was a thriller, entertaining for the fans, certainly entertaining for the neutral. But you couldn't help but come away from that on Saturday bitterly disappointed. Not even that they didn't get a point from it, but that they lost all 3 points.
Yeah, I mean that match was a whirlwind of a game. For the neutrals, it must have been lovely, seven
Mm.
goal thriller, really proper MLS match in that regard. But yeah, I think it was disappointing given the form that they were going into the match with, the win against SKC, the matches the points that they picked up away from home in that away run, the confidence that everybody had going into it, but also disappointing given the way that they bounced back after going 2-0 down. I thought that I was going to go in the same way as it was in St. Louis a few weeks ago, where the Whitecaps went down 2, then came back and were able to go and win the match. Unfortunately for them, something happened in the last, 10, 15 minutes. And instead of them coming away as the winner, they went 3-2 up after being 2-0 down, and they conceded 2 and lost 4-3. So a lot of positives from the game that I think you can take, especially with the fight back and the comeback to score 3 unanswered goals. But obviously, a bitter taste in the mouth given the fact that they did all of those heroics and they had nothing to show for it in the end.
Yeah, I think that is what really hurts the most. That they put themselves in a hole and they can't keep affording to put themselves in a hole like this, especially at home. But they did superbly to get themselves out of it in the second half. And then whether it's just mentally switching off or whether Houston just found another gear, in the end, I think Houston probably were the deserved winners, the way that they started and the way that they finished. And you've got to see those games out. And the Whitecaps had started like on the front foot. The early chances had a couple in the first 5 minutes. White had one with a cut back from Gauld, and then Berhalter had a shot saved. And you're like, oh, they're on the front foot. They're playing with confidence. This is going to be a good victory. There was a big moment in the 18th minute where Ranko Veselinovic, a huge block on Amin Bassi,
Mm.
that you're like, oh, that is possibly going to be the game turning minute or moment. But then you've got the 2 goals, and sandwiched in between that is obviously the injury to Ryan Gauld, which we'll come to that injury in a sec. But we'll talk about the goals first. Both with an aid of a deflection in different ways. So with the first one, 29th minute, Coco Carrasquilla, ball comes to him, he takes the shot, it deflects off Ranko, takes it past Takaoka, who I think is kind of wrong-footed a little bit just because of that deflection, and very much against the run of play, Houston have the lead.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate goal because of the deflection. But again, it kind of showed that when the team is only able to react, instead of being a little bit more proactive, those opportunities will sort of present themselves. There was a deflection that took it away from Takaoka, and I don't think there's anything really Takaoka could have done from it, but there's obviously things that the team could have done before Coco had that shot that they will be probably looking through the video today and identifying what went wrong there. But yeah, it definitely felt a bit against the run of play, and I think that shocked the Whitecaps a little bit, and that's why, quickly then Houston were able to make it 2 just 7 minutes later.
Yeah. And I'd mentioned about how Ryan's injury was in between the 2 goals. The injury was before the first goal, but he got taken off between the 2 goals, which was what I was meaning. And they were playing with 11 men on the first goal, but Ryan was clearly not moving right. and he got substituted off immediately after because they were waiting to make the sub when the goal went in. Now, that knock to Ryan, when he went down, it kind of looked like he jarred his studs maybe a little bit in the turf. And at first you thought maybe ankle, and then it turned out it was left knee. And he has been struggling with a knee issue, which I thought was his right knee. Which, if this is his left knee and the other injury that he's been having niggles with was his right knee, that's really not good.
No, I mean, dealing with one knee injury, especially a consistent knee injury, is already, concerning enough. But having to deal with both knees, you kind of need both of them to run and to
Yeah.
walk. It makes it very difficult for, recovery because if both knees are injured, which one shoulders more of the weight? Which one, you're supposed to have at least one to help the other out by taking more, of the load of the weight of walking and running and everything. But if both are screwed, then that makes it really tough for Ryan to actually have a proper recovery.
Yeah. And we haven't had any official updates. He is getting imaging done today on his knee just to see the extent of the problem. We're recording this on Monday afternoon. There might be some news breaks just before the podcast drops, but we'll see. But it's very concerning. And as soon as he went down, you were thinking, oh shit, because he's so crucial to the team. The plus point from it is you needed then the team to step up, which they did in the second half, and players came to the fore, and they're going to need to if Ryan's out for any period of time. But I don't know if that kind of disrupted the flow of the team for that opening goal or not, or if I'm maybe just being very benefited out to the defending, because the Whitecaps haven't kept a clean sheet now since May 4th. And Vanny's very taken out the Pacific game, so like league play, they haven't kept a clean sheet since May 4th. And Vanny's spoken a lot. He's very adamant that this defensive setup works. When we got a chance to speak to Axel Schuster before the game on Saturday, when he was talking about possible additions and stuff, and we'll look at that in the next part primarily, but he kind of said that they're looking at all areas in front of the back line, which made it sound that he's quite happy with the back line just now.
Hmm.
Should they be? Because 4 goals given up at home, and I know 2 had an element of a deflection in it, but as you said, chances to nip out that before it even got to that. And for the second goal for Dorsey, when the ball breaks to him, a defender, he is wide open at the edge of the box.
Yeah, I think it's tough because when you're playing in a zonal system, you're not really focusing on the players and where they are. You're more focusing on where the ball is and the spaces. So if deflections happen and fall to a player that you thought was not a danger because they weren't in the, in the line of where the pass was going, where the ball was going, but then it falls to him, then that's sort of one of the things that you concede when playing a super zonal system. What you need then to do to compensate for it is have quick reactions and a fast reaction. And that was a thing that I think was lacking a little bit from the Whitecaps. Now, full credit to Griffin Dorsey, a fantastic curled effort
Oh, yeah.
I don't think he could have hit that sweeter. But I think the Whitecaps, yet again, struggled to react. And I think that's a common theme in the last few games, you could say even throughout the season for the Whitecaps, is that when they do concede, a lot of the times it's because the zonal system has been destabilized. Somebody has broken the system in terms of being too individual, going to get the man instead of the space, and it all kind of breaks down. Or in this case, and as being the case, even with SKC, they aren't able to compensate for those uncertainties. And uncertainties will happen and mistakes will happen.
Yeah. And
But you need to be,
deflections will happen. And
of course. But the biggest thing you got to do is you got to try to make sure that when they do happen, unless it's in the shots that deflects it towards goal, like Coco's, you can't really do anything as a
yeah.
defender there. But if it's in the build-up, then you have to react quickly. I think somebody should have been, as soon as they saw the deflection, tried to throw a leg out, tried to do something to kind of block the clear shot that Dorsey had. It's still a difficult shot, but it's still like it sailed through with no danger of it
Yeah.
being deflected and nestled into the side netting. So again, it was a very well worked goal. And to be fair, a lot of defending in the modern age is about in the box and not so much out of the box, because most of the goals are going inside the box. We're not seeing too many goals happen from outside the
Mm.
box anymore in this day and age. So maybe there's not as much emphasis on it. But when you do concede a goal like that, it's tough to swallow, especially given that you just conceded 6 minutes before and now you're 2-0 down at home and you kind of haven't even had a chance to gather your bearings before reality hits you.
Yeah. And like sometimes you just have to stand up and applaud and say, that was a fantastic finish.
Mm,
And three of Houston's goals were fantastic finishes. You can't put blame on anyone for the finish, but you can put blame on the build-up, which is
mm.
to allow that finish to begin with. And there certainly is some questions to ask on the third and fourth Houston goals. But yeah, 2-0 down, 36 minutes in, and you're thinking, oh boy, they're in a hole. It's a deep one, and I don't know that they're getting out of this with Ryan Gauld now off the pitch. So they needed someone to step up, and that guy was Fafa Picault, and in good form anyway, but absolutely an amazing response from Fafa towards the end of the first half. He had a couple of chances that didn't go, but then started the second half. The Whitecaps, like the halftime team talk, they're still in the game if they can get the next goal. So they have to get out quick. 3 minutes into the second half, they get it, and it's Fafa. And at that precise moment, you're thinking, oh, they're very much back in this. And the way that this team plays, I thought, yeah, they're going to go on now and do this. But it was great that Fafa again rose up and like seized the game by the scruff of the neck because somebody did to. And it's like Ali played the ball inside to Raposo, and his cross, another deflection, right in front of goal. Now, Pico couldn't miss from inches out, I don't think. If he did, it was going to go down as our miss of the year. But you still have to be there and you still have to connect with it. And yeah, it gave the team huge confidence after that.
Yeah, I mean it was right place, right time for Picault. And I feel like that's kind of been, a trend with him right now, is he's just getting into those really good spots to be able to have those opportunities. And the fact that, yeah, it took a little bit of deflection, maybe a little bit of karmic justice, for us there in terms of, the fact that there was two deflections in Houston's opening two goals. But yeah, something must have happened at halftime that really inspired the team to get back into the match, because it felt like a completely different team than what we saw towards the end
Mm.
of the first half. And it was funny because it was like the inverse of what happened against SKC, where first half they're really good, and then the beginning of the second half they weren't great. Now in this one, first half they were kind of good, but they conceded then two goals. But at the beginning of the second half, they were playing really, really well and got that early goal. And as soon as you get a goal right either side of halftime, either right before or right after, it really changes the whole tone of the match, because it happens right after. Everything that Houston talked about kind of goes out the window,
Hmm.
because they're probably talking about, let's keep the clean sheet, let's try to get a third, let's keep it tight, let's keep it cagey. Immediately they score, and it's like, okay, well, now what? And if you score right before halftime, then the coach has to completely change his halftime chat. So that's why I always find that if a team is down one or two, if to score right before half or right after half is probably best case scenario, because it gives you the most momentum
Hmm.
going into the rest of the match. So it felt perfectly for the Whitecaps to be able to take the game by the scruff of the neck, and it just so happened to be Fafa Picault that was the star of it.
Yeah, and it certainly did give the Caps a boost for the next 30 minutes. And that was the third straight game that Fafa had got on the score sheet. And then he turned a sister in the 54th minute, sending the cross in for Ranko to powerfully head home. I'd like to see more of that from Ranko because he's such a threat in the box. And I feel that he could easily get more goals than he does in a season. But again, another well worked move, another great delivery, and another header for the Whitecaps.
Yeah, the usually I don't know. I feel like the Whitecaps aren't the tallest of players, so to see them
Hmm.
win so many headers, especially Ryan Gauld win so many headers, is always funny to see. But yeah, I mean, pretty much Houston Dynamo scored in 7 minutes in the first half, then the Whitecaps scored in 7 minutes in the second half to make it 2-2. So it kind of felt tit for tat in that regard. But yeah, really good, well worked goal again. Fafa Picault. I just felt like in this game, especially in the second half, he was playing with such confidence. He was playing with such, adventure in the way that he just every touch he made, every pass, every shot felt purposeful. It felt like he knew what he was doing, and he knew that he was skilled enough to create these opportunities, to put them away or to become provider. And that's what it was in this goal. It just definitely took it down, put a perfect cross in for Ranko Veselinovic, and Ranko could do no wrong there, headed it in. And yeah, I think they should be able to find ways to utilize their tall guys a little bit more. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why they brought Damir in, is because he is gives a bit of a height advantage as well that they haven't been able to really use as much due to his sort of injuries, and obviously Brian White's really good form as of late. But I feel like that could be another sort of angle to the way that they attack. And if they can use, yeah, Damir and Ranko's height a little bit more off set pieces, then we can see more of these kinds of goals.
Yeah, and Houston looked shell shocked. They didn't know what hit them. I mean, they did recover and they had a chance. Takaoka saved a Ferrara header, but I think it's because Ferreira and Bassi kind of got in each other's way because Bassi tried to go for the acrobatic kick and I think it put off the clear header. So Whitecaps did dodge a bullet there, but then it was all Whitecaps. Fafa almost slid in for a free kick at the back post that just eluded him. Wasn't to be denied though. Sliding in to tuck home the third, put the Whitecaps in the lead. Again, great anticipation from him, playing the way that we know he can. Great to see Sam involved in the move as well, having just come on. And just all round, it was a great team goal, just what they needed. They've got the lead, and you're not expecting them to give it up at that point.
No, as soon as the third goal came in, I was honestly thinking about the fourth
Yeah.
at that point, because it felt like the momentum Vancouver were in with 18, 17 minutes to play. It felt like it was only going one way. Houston looked shell-shocked. I was looking at some
Mhm.
of the players and they were lost for words. They were kind of arguing with each other. They were kind of
Yeah.
pointing fingers, and it felt like they completely lost the plot. And the Whitecaps were in the driver's seat. So I thought that this was gonna be another, heroic comeback. I was already thinking about the headline and the tag line and everything for this match. But then, as games tend to do, they surprise you, and you can never predict what's gonna happen as much as you might have seen these kinds of games before. And Houston would not go out without further fight.
Mm. So before we get to the two goals by Houston, we've got to talk about the big turning point of the game. Literally just before Houston's equaliser, Fafa goes down in the box. Referee Fotis Bazokas, no, Fotis Bazakos? Yeah, Bazakos.
Bazakos, I think.
Wave play on. After a very lengthy stoppage, which I timed to be 10 seconds shy of 4 minutes in the end, after he went over, did the video review and came back, stuck to his original decision, clearly saying it wasn't clear and obvious that he'd made a mistake to overturn the initial call on the pitch. No penalty for the Whitecaps. Now, a couple of interesting things in this. First of all, Brian White had picked the ball up for the penalty. I don't know if you noticed
Mm-hmm.
this. And then Fafa went over and asked to get the ball so he could get his hat trick. And Brian gave the ball to Fafa to take the penalty.
I did. I also saw that there was two balls in play. Fafa had one and Brian had one as well. I think they were
Ah,
discussing between them who was actually going to take it. I think Brian threw the ball back in behind towards the ball boy, so Fafa could be the one to take the penalty. So I think that was kind of both kind of realized it's like we both want to take the penalty, but Brian was like, okay, I'll let you get your hat trick, and then he kind of threw it away, which was nice
yeah.
from Brian. But yeah, it was a lengthy VAR check.
Yeah. Now, when I saw it live, I thought my first thing was, I don't think that's a penalty. Saw the replays in the stadium, and I was like, I can see that there's a bit of contact, but did he get the ball? And I thought at that point, oh, there isn't really a clear angle just from the little bits that we saw in the stadium. When I got home and watched it, that looks a penalty clearly to me. And if you look at the camera that's behind the goal, that's right face on, you see that Fafa's in front and he gets his ankle kicked. And to
Yes.
me, that looked a clear reason to overturn it. And obviously, the video review officials thought that as well.
Yeah, it was all in all like a bit of a mess in terms of the whole VR thing because it took, I think, too long, which has been a bit of a habit of
Yes.
VR recently in MLS. We're just taking too long. I don't know because again we're spoiled by Euros and international football, where VAR is much quicker.
Although
But
Copa, it was taking a hell of a long time as well.
that's true. Yeah, Copa was taking quite a bit of time, but it just felt like you see the replay, you see the replay, you see the replay, and it kind of felt like if it fell into that category of if it would have been given, it wouldn't have been overturned because
Mhm.
it wasn't clear and obvious that he wasn't fouled. But because it wasn't given, it wasn't clear and obvious that it was fouled. And so there was no big enough margin of error for them to call it a penalty. I think that's what probably the referees thought, that kind of fell into that uncomfortable position where it could have gone either way and we probably
Mm.
wouldn't have overruled it either way, but because the referee had judged it to not be a penalty, he went and looked at the monitor and said there isn't enough there for me to overturn it and didn't give the penalty. Now, that being said, yeah, you look back and obviously slow motion and different camera
Yeah.
angles make anything look a lot worse than it was in real time. But I would argue, and this might be biased, but I would argue that it was a penalty. But because it wasn't so clear a penalty, I can understand why the referee didn't call it. And I think that, a lot of people didn't like it. Vanny was not a fan of the call
Yeah,
afterwards.
I was worried Vanny was going to get a card and a fine because he was slowly unraveling on the sideline and in stoppage time as well. I was keeping an eye on him with the time wasting from Houston, and he was losing it, and it stemmed from that penalty incident.
Yeah.
But
And it was funny from Vanny as well, because after the match he went to go chat with Ben Olsen, and I couldn't tell if he was being like aggressively friendly or annoyed
yeah,
because
I couldn't either. It did look a bit uncomfortable.
yeah, it did, and it felt like, you had an opportunity where they either one could blow up and they could turn into a whole thing, but thankfully it didn't. But
Yeah,
it definitely felt like Vanny was maybe giving some respect, but also some grievances against the game to Ben Olsen there. But yeah, it was again penalties like that when it's so quick and there's some contact, but it's not so clear. It's really tough for any call to be really given with such certainty. And I think, again, another example of why VAR rules have to kind of maybe be looked at because, there shouldn't be a category really where it could go either way. It should just be, is it enough to like, is it a penalty looking at it? Not, was it clear and obvious enough for me to overturn it? Just, is it a penalty? Yes, call the penalty. Not worry about clear and obvious error. I think that's where things get a little bit more muddy because what is a clear and obvious error? But that's
yeah.
been, the conversation for years since VR has been put in. So probably won't be the last that we see
No.
of it with the Whitecaps.
And like, if you were to ask me, do I think it was a penalty? Yes, I do. Could I be 100% certain? No.
And
I'm
that's probably why
pretty
it wasn't called.
certain, but I'm not 100%. So I can see why they did it. It was just unfortunate, though, that then the equaliser came seconds after the game restarted. And I don't know if this was another case of the Whitecaps being, oh, we can push on here. We can try and get everyone going forward, get this fourth goal, put the game to bed. But they were caught very short at the back on a quick counter, but you have to give Brad Smith his due. I haven't seen if it's made goal of the week, but if that is not goal of the week, I don't know what's going to beat it because that was one hell of a finish from Smith.
It kind of came out of nowhere,
Yeah.
really. I mean, again, I think it was the fact that the Whitecaps were still thinking about the VAR decision. They were probably frustrated. They were probably in their heads thinking about it, not thinking about the situation. And Houston Dynamo took advantage of that. The Whitecaps, one of the reasons why they started the second half so well is that they made a brave choice of taking off Luis Martins and then dropping Kubas into that back three. So it really was a back two with just Kubas dropping deep. And then you had, I think Sebastian Berhalter had to switch over as well when Ryan Gauld was taken off for injury, and Kubas was taken off, I think, as well in the 60th minute. And so like things had to shuffle around where eventually Sebastian Berhalter was part of the back three, and it was like a makeshift back three, and evidently he's not used to being those positions, so he was kind of a
Mm.
step behind Brad Smith. Don't really think you could blame him all that much because again, Smith just came on, so he's fresh legs, and I don't think anybody knew that he had that in his locker
No.
to literally just look up, see the goal, put his head down, and just thump it into the top right hand corner. I mean, we had a perfect view of it, and
Yeah.
my mouth just dropped
It
at
was
that goal
beautiful.
because it was stunning. Like all allegiances aside, that was a stunning goal.
Yeah. He could hit that ball another 100 times, and I don't know how many of them would even have got anywhere close to where that ended up. It was just
Yeah.
perfect connection. Nothing Takaoka could do because you're not expecting a shot like that to come flying in. The force of it as well. But they tied it up, and at that point, I genuinely was like, this game could go either way. I had no idea how the last 12 minutes was going to play out. I thought the Whitecaps might have enough because of the way that Fafa was playing, that he would carry them through. But with Houston, 3 minutes from time, got the winner. Dorsey again, a second goal from Griffin Dorsey. Another blast. Great finish. Through all the players, high into the net. Whitecaps had opportunities to clear it and just could not get a proper clearance or a foot on it. And then it comes back to Dorsey, who's got space, time, bang, in the back of the net. Disappointing one to lose the game to.
Yeah, especially I think this is the goal that I have the most grievance with because of the fact that the ball was there were so many opportunities to clear that ball. It was bouncing around and people were throwing legs forward and they weren't talking. There wasn't a lot of communication. It was just frantic. It was just anybody get some purchase on it. In the end, I think it was Ali that got some purchase on it, but it was not a good clearance. He basically just like poked it towards Dorsey. And again, really great finish from Dorsey. It's hard to be able to do that. So, full credit to him. They scored two really good goals. Lately, he's really liked to score against the Whitecaps. I think that's his third goal in
Mm.
the last two games. Um, but it's just the whole disorganization of it beforehand. I mean, everything that the whole defensive structure completely broke down at that point, and no one really stepped up to kind of be the person to settle things down, whether that be somebody just huffing it high and wide or reading the pass or the flight of the ball beforehand to actually get that interception, get that block in, snuff the danger out. It just felt like everyone was everywhere, and
Mhm.
it kind of felt like amateur football. Like that was my VMSL team defending there instead of the Whitecaps.
Yeah. It was just a scramble and just panic at the back. And full credit to Houston. They seized the opportunity. They came back and won it. If it had finished 3-all, I'd have been like, that's a good point. The way the game's twisted and turned. Yeah, I guess a point disappointed, but I take it after being two down. But to then come back, lead, have that possible penalty, and then throw it away is just like it could be one of those games which every team has. If you don't make the playoffs or you don't make the top four or whatever, you're always going to, every fan of every team can pinpoint, well, that's where it went wrong, that particular game. And you always look for one thing. but it's always over the season. But I like to do that, and this could be the game that we look back at and go, that was a huge costly game for us. And I haven't written down who did this. I've just written down the 95th minute. Whitecaps had a break, and I don't know who it was, but whoever it was too slow to release the ball because they had options either side of them.
I don't remember.
It wasn't Fafa because Fafa was to the left. So I don't know if it was Levante or who it was. It might have been Brian, but someone was coming forward and just did not release the ball. They had tried to do too much. So that could have been an opportunity, but it's 3 big points lost. And it moved the Whitecaps to within a point of Houston. Now, in the standings, it dropped down to fifth in the standings and has made things a lot more difficult now for the 10 games remaining.
Yeah, because I think, when you talk about crucial games in the season, I had kind of pinpointed these 2 games as being a part of it, just, because of how tight it is in the table. And also because, specifically with Houston, that's like a direct rival for a position.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the opportunities that we could have had we won that match, because I think the Whitecaps would have been level with Colorado, who are fourth right now on 41 points, having played 2 games less. That and I think they could have, if they would have won that game and then another game in hand that they had on RSL, they would have been level with RSL in third,
Mm-hmm.
because RSL, LAFC, and LA Galaxy have been dropping points a little bit. It kind of created the opportunity of like, hey, maybe the Whitecaps could sneak in to top 4, maybe even top 3. But now, because of that loss, even though there's still 2 games in hand on Colorado and 1 game in hand on RSL, they're 3 and 6 points behind them, which makes it a bit more difficult for the prospects of getting into the top 4. And then obviously you look towards the last place, which is 9th place Minnesota. They're on 33. They're not that far away either, from 9th place, the last possible position. That's only 5 points, and
Yeah.
the games are again coming thick and fast after the Leagues Cup break because of Leagues Cup. And the good thing for them is they have so many home games. The concerning thing is that home games aren't really their strong suit right now.
Well, yeah. So there's 10 games left. Well, first of all, we should mention the next MLS game is not until LAFC come on August 24th. So there's a huge gap now because of Leagues Cup. And I don't know if that works good or bad for the Whitecaps. But when you look at the games left, there's 10 left, 6 at home, LAFC, which is obviously going to be tough, Dallas and San Jose, where you're looking at those and you're thinking that has to be 6 points. And then Portland, currently 8th, Seattle, currently 7th, Minnesota, currently 9th. Those 3 home games could be the making or breaking of the Whitecaps season.
Yeah, I would probably say they will be. I'm pretty confident, because obviously the positions might change between now and then, but they will still be in and around the Whitecaps. And I think those 3 games could very well be, because of how tight the table is, could very well be the difference between the Whitecaps being still in that top 4 race, and then the Whitecaps being in 7th or 8th
Well,
position.
I mean, depending, a good swing, I think we could look at Whitecaps top 4. Middling, we're probably looking at 5th, 6th, or 7th. You don't take points from those games, and you're looking at 8th or 9th. And that is not where you want to be having a play-in game. And when you look at our home form, that Houston game was the 4th loss of the season at BC Place. The Whitecaps have dropped 16 points at home. And when you look at how well they've done on the road, they could be out of sight in the West. You'd be looking at top 2 if they could make BC Place a fortress, which is easier said than done, obviously. The away games to come in this 10 games, they're away to Austin, who are just outside the playoffs. That could also be massive if it's a big swing. Houston, where we notoriously don't do that well down there. And then our last 2 away games are LA Galaxy and RSL. And RSL, interestingly, is the last game of the season. So it's a tough run in. We could have been sitting not home and dry, but fairly comfortable. But instead, now we have a hell of a battle in our hands. And the big question, I've asked it to Vanny several times this season, what is wrong at home? Is our style of play not conducive to how teams come to BC Place to play?
That's a tough question because I feel like the way that they like to play, because it's so direct, because it's so fluid, it's very much sort of counter-attacking football, which is to say that when they're not the team that is in possession, they have a lot of players and assets that work well to be able to break quickly and go and score. You see, the Whitecaps love to do those long ball forward that Brian White gets on. He kind of flicks it towards Ryan Gauld. Ryan Gauld then takes it on his bike, drives forward, crosses it, or drills a driven pass into the middle of the box, and that's how we score. Those are some of the plays that the Whitecaps really like to do. They like to do quick, one touch passing play, third man run to be able to break lines of press and then quickly attack on goal. That is a lot of football that is conducive for teams that like to break quickly. But for when the Whitecaps are sort of expected to take control of the match, that's where I see them struggle more, because when teams like to go into a low block, when teams like to kind of be a bit more cagey, it's harder for the Whitecaps to dismantle stubborn defenses like that, especially when pretty much they have to rely on Ryan Gauld to be the creative spark. And if you take Ryan Gauld out of the equation, either because he's injured or suspended or because he's very tightly marked, then there's where the Whitecaps sort of struggle. And I think it's not only just the fact that sometimes they struggle when they're the ones expected to be in domination, but it's also the fact that I've always had this feeling with the Whitecaps, and I know I'm not the only one, that when they are starting to get good crowds, the pressure becomes greater, and then that's where they start to break. I feel like they do well under that underdog mentality rather than when they are the favorites to win, because that's where I feel like they kind of get in their heads a little bit. And I don't think that even has to do so much with the style of play. I think that's just the general mentality around the team. And that might be a concern that I don't think Vanny or anyone from the Caps will explicitly state on the record.
No.
But I feel like it has to be something that they are looking into.
Yeah. I mean, when I've asked, it's all been kind of played down a little bit. But I mean, the thing is, once MLS gets back underway on August 24th, the secondary window's closed. We'll know what players the Whitecaps have to have through the rest of the season. We'll know a lot more as well about potential players that may have moved on, those that's come in, maybe any injury things as well. And there's some new roster rules in MLS as well that's going to shake up not just the Whitecaps, but very much the rest of the MLS West. We'll look at that and a few more Whitecaps things after we take you back to 1974.
Hi, I'm Ryan Gauld, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Every little thing I do
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM, brought to you in partnership with recoveryfamilylaw.ca. For all your family legal needs, based out of Surrey, they support us. Go and support them. And kicking off this part, we've taken you all the way back to 1974 and a song that entered the UK charts this week 50 years ago, the Glitter Band, with their second single, Just For You. It peaked at number 10 in the charts, taken from their debut album, Hey, and I think a song that just encaptures the glam rock sound of that era. And this week, 50 years ago in Whitecaps land, it was another two-game week for the Whitecaps in NASL action as their grueling schedule continued apace. They had 12 days off, at least going into this one. But on Friday, July 26th, the Whitecaps travelled to Spartan Stadium in San Jose to take on fellow new boys, San Jose Earthquakes, going down to a 3-1 defeat in front of 17,670 fans. It was a scoreless first half before George McLean opened the scoring for the Whitecaps in the 48th minute. But less than 10 minutes later, Earthquakes' Archie Robostoff made it 1-1, putting away a Paul Child assist. Child himself got on the scoreboard in the 65th minute, finishing off a cross from Art Welsh, and the Earthquakes got the decisive third goal and put the tie to bed when a shot hit off Whitecaps defender Billy Stevenson, ended up in the back of the net, and the Quakes came away with a 3-1 victory, and the Whitecaps fell to another defeat. But they were back in action at home this time, just 2 days later, on Sunday, July 28th, taking on LA Aztecs at Empire Stadium. 8,024 fans came out for this one, and they came out to see a 3-1 Whitecaps victory. And this was a feisty one, with the Whitecaps' Billy Stevenson and LA's Uri Banhofer exchanging shoves and then punches late in the game. Stevenson hurled Banhofer to the ground, and it was Vancouver's Brian Budd who got involved and got the only red card from that altercation. Very different times, football in the 70s, if you've seen any of the games on YouTube. Ironic, really, that Budd got sent off because he was the man that got a brace and an assist in the match. Daryl Sampson had put the Whitecaps ahead 7 minutes in, firing home a cross from Budd. Then right on the stroke of half-time, Budd got his first off the game before adding a second in the 82nd minute after a great individual effort. LA's leading scorer, another Scot, Billy McMillan, headed home a late consolation for the Aztecs before all the stramash broke out. After the game, Budd explained that Banhofer took a kick at Willie Stevenson and Willie turned around in a fit of temper. They were doing things like that all game. They'd tramp across your toes with their cleats and then say, "Excuse me." The guy that was checking me would spit on my legs as I was running down the field. And then Budd just got involved to break things up and was the man that got the red card. Despite coming away, though, with a 3-1 victory, the Whitecaps were officially eliminated from the NASL playoff race after San Jose came away with a 2-0 victory over St. Louis later on that Sunday. And that left the Whitecaps with 2 games of their inaugural season left to play. And we'll bring you details of those 2 games in future episodes of the show. But for now, that was This Week in Whitecaps Land, 1974. So from the past right up to the present Whitecaps, and we'll continue to talk Whitecaps 2024 because the transfer window is now open in MLS for all teams, not just the Canadian ones who had that week's head start, which of course sadly means they also closed theirs a week earlier, so less time to do business. And there hasn't been any movement yet. There's been a few rumours out there that we'll touch on in this part. Media got a chance to sit down with Axel and Quinn Thompson before the game on Saturday, more an informal chat just about a few things, the state of the club just now. Axel said, though, that there definitely will be players coming in to the Whitecaps roster in this window, and maybe some going out. And depending on the latter, will dictate how many need to come in. Because if we lose some key pieces, obviously they need replaced. If we don't lose those pieces, then we just need to strengthen the areas that we've got. And unless I picked him up wrong, I'm sure Axel said that they're looking at every area outside of the back line. I don't think he meant including the back line the way that he worded it. So I'm thinking he's looking at midfield and forward. And he particularly said that they're looking to add some speed.
Yeah, I remember that in that conversation, he was being, as he always is, very tactical in exactly how he was wording things, which I got a kick out a little bit, saying that he wanted speed specifically in the forwards position and out wide, which I think, very easily, if you read between the lines, means likely a wing back comes in and then either a striker or a 10/winger comes in. And I think that's exactly what Whitecaps have been sort of crying out for. I mean, that's what I wrote in the transfer article that I did for AFTN, and that's what I've been sort of talking about in general for the last little while, is that they need that speed in behind, especially because the way they like to play fast on the break, they need somebody else to be able to be fast on the break, but not only be fast, but be clinical as well, especially in that forward position. Because if you look at it, the Whitecaps do have speed in terms of Levante Johnson, but the issue with Levante Johnson is that he's just not clinical or technical enough to actually be effective in the attack. He's got bundles of energy. He's very, very quick, and he's got a lot of, bravery in the way that he plays, but it doesn't always work out. And I feel like he might not be the level that we need to really push the club into the right direction to the next level. So I think
we got a good example of that late in Saturday's game, where he had the ball out wide, and it's like he just tried to do too much or didn't know what to do with it. And then the ball just got taken off him. He just got crowded around by players, and he didn't have the necessary skill to make the most of the opportunity. And sadly, as much as I like Levante, I don't know that he is this MLS level, because he just hasn't quite shown it yet.
Yeah, I would say, unfortunately, again, as much as I like Levante as a person and, as a Whitecap, I do feel like he hasn't shown enough yet to prove that he is at this level. And I think that's why the Whitecaps are looking for further reinforcement, whether that is a striker to provide some competition for Brian White, somebody that they can call upon if Brian White isn't firing, or if it's injured, or if it's suspended. Or they're looking for a player, maybe a pacier player, but still a creative player that can help Ryan Gauld out, whether that be from the wingback position, a la Julian Gressel from last season, or from now the kind of 10/winger that the Whitecaps like to employ, where basically Ryan Gauld has been playing alongside Ali or Fafa in that front three. I think that's probably what they're looking for right now, and I think that that's what they need to be looking for more than anything, because as we've seen throughout the season, the Whitecaps have great opportunities, but sometimes they are missing those great opportunities. I don't want anyone to look at what the XG numbers are for this season in terms of that. And also, especially against low blocks, they struggle to be creative outside of Ryan Gauld. So having another creative player, maybe a pacey creative player that can not only create, but create and then finish off his own move, could be very useful for the way that the Whitecaps want to play. More than anything, I think they just need to add a little bit more dynamism and a little more variety, because sometimes it feels like the Whitecaps are a bit too one note, which is basically ping the ball either to Brian or to Ryan, let them play with each other, and then go and score.
Yeah. And at the time of recording, we obviously don't know the extent of Ryan's injury, and we just have to hope it isn't too serious, and that it's not with his other knee issues, as we touched upon, that isn't part of it as well. That there's also, which I've tried to get clarification of, and no one really has been able to come up with the answer yet. There used to be that if you missed the All-Star game, then you couldn't play in the next MLS game. So I don't know if that's still in play or if the Leagues Cup is one of that thing. So he would miss the next Leagues Cup game if he was good to play. I sadly don't think that's going to factor into it because I don't see him playing for a while. Whether this is a good or a bad knee injury, he needs to rest. He shouldn't be playing against Wrexham. He shouldn't be playing these League Cup games, and we need to save him for the MLS run-in. Worst case scenario, if it is an injury that's going to keep him out for a while, not only do we need someone to play alongside Ryan, we need someone now to come in and be Ryan until he's good to come back.
I mean, that's the biggest thing. That's always been the concern with the Whitecaps is that it's great to have two or three players that are always delivering for you, but if you have no one that can be a good deputy for them, then if, the worst happens, how are you going to make up for it? Because if you look at the stats, if you look at the numbers, and if you look at the eye test, there's a big gap between, Ryan Gauld and pretty much everybody else in terms of creativity. And I feel like, Brian White, you could argue is that, but I think that has to do with their relationship where they just know where each other's going to be. So you take him out. I don't know if Brian White will be as creative. I think it's going to be really tough for the Whitecaps to succeed if Ryan Gauld is injured, if they don't bring someone maybe not of that level, but with some creativity to be able to, boost the team, because if not, it's going to be probably low scoring games and it's going to be a lot more of a grind than I think both Vanny and the fans want to see.
Well, talking about that Ryan Brian connection, and it's one game, it's an hour off a game, but that Houston game, I mean, White wasn't overly involved in it up to Ryan going off, but after Ryan went off, you hardly noticed Brian White on the pitch. And it was Fafa was the guy that then stepped up, thankfully. I mean, before we look at the new roster rules and a player that the Whitecaps have been very heavily linked with that looks all but certain that he is going to be coming, there are two players that could move on. Three if you include Diber Caicedo, but he's not here. So I mean, Axel clarified that Diver's contract was till the end of July, and that's why he hasn't returned yet to the Whitecaps. But I think it's looking less and less likely that Diber is going to come back. But two players currently on the roster that situations are unclear. And if you're looking to add speed, one of the speedsters on the team may be going, which of course is Fafa Picault. A lot's been made of that. Now, he's got 8 goals and 4 assists across all competitions, 22 games played. 12 of those 22 games are starts this season. And this is currently his third best season in his 8 of his time in Major League Soccer. I mean, you consider how much there's still to go. This could very easily prove to be his best season in MLS. Now, we won't get into all the ins and outs. Does he want to go? Does he not want to go? It came out that he wasn't happy with his playing time. As I said on the show at the time, one way to get that playing time is to perform in the minutes you get. And he most certainly has with 4 goals in 3 matches and sprinkle assists in there as well. I left right after the game on Saturday. I had to get home, but you're one of the media that spoke to Fafa after the game outside the locker room. And on the pitch, he isn't looking like a player that doesn't want to be here, which flies in the face of the internet reports, which he has previously said he doesn't know where they came from, which you take with a pinch of salt. But I mean, what did you get from Fafa after the game? What was his mood? Because obviously it wasn't a recorded videoed session, so folk haven't seen. I mean, how did he come across?
He came across, obviously pretty content with his own performance. You could see there's obviously a little bit frustrated because of the result, but overall he seemed pretty relaxed. we sort of asked him about his time in Vancouver, how he's enjoyed playing for the team. He said that it's one of, if not the best dressing rooms that he's been a part of in his entire MLS career, which is great to hear that, the camaraderie in the team is really, really high. And he really likes living in Vancouver. He likes the fact that, similar to me, you can have the city life and also the nature life. He said that I don't go on hikes, but even I've been on a few hikes since I've been here,
Yeah.
which is, funny to see. So it seems like he's pretty well settled. Didn't seem like he's a player that was revving to leave,
Mm.
and it seemed like he was a player that was just happy to play football. He said that that's all he's ever cared about. It was
Hmm.
what he's loved for entire life, and he just wants to play his game. It doesn't really matter maybe where, but as long as he's allowed to play his game. So it seems to be pretty happy right now. Also talked about his relationship with Ali Ahmed, said that he's like a little brother and they get
Yeah.
along super, super well. And even when they're on the pitch together, he tries to help him and lead by example and everything. So he has connections in the squad. He really likes the ambience of the squad. He really likes the city and the area surrounding. So it looks like he's a player who's pretty happy to stay. Now, obviously, we might not know all of the details
Yeah.
surrounding it, and he might just be putting on a really brave face, a really good face. But from the surface of what we saw in that sort of media availability was that he looked pretty happy to be there.
Well, I mean, that's good to hear. I want him to stay. I want him to be here for the rest of the season. I've always been a big fan of his. I was delighted we signed him. Speaking to him before the season, he comes across as a great guy as well. We had an absolutely fantastic chat, and I hope to chat with him again in the coming weeks. Not about this situation because obviously he's not going to be too forthcoming. Hopefully, he's here for us to chat about that. He did mention he wants to find a place that's got good Caribbean food. So if anyone listening to this knows of places in Vancouver that have got good Caribbean food, please let Fafa know. That might be the thing that gets
Might
him
be
to
a thing that
stay.
gets him to stay, huh?
But as you say, there's a public side and maybe a private side that we don't see. It does feel like Vanny has a few digs at him for his defensive play. And I don't know how that sits with Fafa, but he had another little dig after the game on Saturday when asked about how well Fafa's playing. And I genuinely can't say one way or the other whether I've noticed that he's a defensive liability or not. It hasn't been something that's sprung out at me. So I'm feeling his defensive play is good.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few times where maybe he's not tracking back quick enough. But I think, if you look at it, Vanny really emphasizes defending from the front. That's why he loves Brian Wright, because White is so good at pressing from the front and forcing, the team to go into uncomfortable spaces where the Whitecaps want them to go. He's really good at cutting the pitch in half and forcing them to one side where the Whitecaps might be more strengthened to defend. And that's why he really likes Brian White. And I think maybe Fafa isn't as proficient at pressing from the front or pressing in an organized manner, and then maybe tracking back to help out as well, since, with because the Whitecaps concede a lot of space out wide. Maybe that's where also he wants some of the more wider players, even the 210s or the wingers, to come back and help out as well. So there might be some instances where he defensively isn't doing maybe to a T what Vanny wants to do. But again, I haven't seen him seen a goal and be like, oh, that was because of Fafa's fault. I haven't seen any goal be conceded in that way. And I
Hmm.
don't think he sees it either, because when he was asked about, what have you done to improve your defensive game as of late? Fafa said that he hasn't done anything. He just keeps playing the way that he's played. So maybe he's seeing something different than Vanny. Maybe there are a bit of odds about his role out of possession. But I'm kind of seeing him as a really good player, attacking wise and defensively. He hasn't seemed like a liability at all. So it seems pretty mint for me.
And I know in modern football, especially in MLS, especially in Vanny's system, you need your attackers to have a defensive side to them. And we've seen players like Ryan Raposo really improve in the defensive side. If you've got a forward player like Fafa doing the business at the other end, I don't give a shit if they come back and defend. It's like, let the defenders deal with that and let him concentrate on being the guy that's scoring goals. Because right now, there's just Gauld, White, and him that are doing the business for the Whitecaps. And we need him to continue to do that. Defensively, one of the players that has been missing in the last couple of games is Javain Brown. And all we know from that is that he's asked for some time off. It just everyone needs a mental health break now and again, I think is roughly how Vanny put it. So we don't know what's going on with Javain. We don't know if it's something that will kind of see him play here, because Vanny was also quoted as saying he doesn't know if he'll play for Vancouver again. But I mean, he's a guy that if he does get moved on, he'll have trade value. So he could move on. That could bring a player in as well. But whatever's going on with Javain, we just obviously want to wish him all the very best and hope that whatever it is just resolves to his satisfaction soon.
Yeah, I think as good of a player as he is and everything, if there is something going on behind the scenes, you want to resolve it as quickly as possible, especially in such a crucial period. Coming up, you have a little bit of a break with Leagues Cup and the Wrexham game. So if anything, if there are going to be major moves, major sort of seismic changes, then now is the time for that to happen. So hopefully that can be resolved. And you also look at the fact that I think he has, a pretty significant salary as well that could, free up a good chunk for the cap. So you could look at it strategically like that as well, from the more sort of financial side of things if he does want to leave. But overall, I mean, in the form that he's at, you would probably not want him to leave at all. And
Well,
so
also Tristan Blackman's still injured.
yeah. And so I feel like you're looking at a situation where the player isn't maybe in the best of minds, but you don't want to disrupt too much, I would say, and that's the biggest thing. And I think, again, it's such a weird time in the season right now where things are able to be moved around and not having too much impact, because who really cares if we don't perform all that well in Leagues Cup. But if you move too much around, then they might not have enough time to settle, even with Leagues Cup and the Wrexham game, before the crunch period starts again with the league, and you can't afford to slip up in these last 10 games pretty much at all. So you want everyone firing on all cylinders. So it's a bit of a tough one. Obviously, if Javain is having some personal issues, then that's outside of the sporting area. That's completely outside of what it might be going on with the team itself. And if that needs to be resolved, then that needs to be resolved. But in my books, I would want to keep him.
Yeah. And it's none of our business what's going on with him either. So hopefully folk don't pry too much, which doesn't seem to be the case in modern life. But yeah, those could be the players that move on. And if they move on, that would maybe dictate as well exactly what business the Whitecaps need to do, what they need to bring in this window. And they will have some new roster rules to navigate this transfer window. 3 roster rule modifications that give clubs increased flexibility in roster construction and more benefits when players are transferred or loaned to clubs outside of MLS. And all of the rules are effective as of now that the summer window has opened. Clubs can now convert up to $3 million of total transfer revenues received into general allocation money without restriction on the amount from any individual players transferred. Under the previous rules, you could only convert just over 1.2 million. So that is a substantial increase really for that. The rules, though, that is going to have caught everyone's attention, though, is around designated players and under 22 initiative player rules. Clubs can now choose whether to go down what's been called the designated player model or the under 22 initiative player model. If they go down the DP model, they can use up to 3 DP roster spots and up to 3 under 22 initiative roster spots, eliminating the previous restrictions faced with DP and under 22 roster roles. Or They can go down an under 22 initiative player model, where clubs can use up to 2 designated player roster spots and up to 4 under 22 initiative roster spots. If they go down that route, they can also get an additional $2 million in general allocation money, and that increased GAM can be used to buy down a player's salary budget charge, sign players new to MLS, or re-sign an existing MLS player, offsetting acquisition costs and more. Now, because this is coming in halfway through the season, so for 2024, clubs that go down the under 22 initiative player model route can introduce up to 1 million in additional GAM due to the mid-season implementation. But if they go from 2025 forward, it'll be 2 million in GAM that they can use. MLS saying that they're making the changes so that teams can choose between the 2 different roster construction models, both giving them 6 prime roster spots, but increasing flexibility and creative control over discretionary funds, allowing clubs to spend according to their roster building philosophy. So that is now the 2 models available to the Whitecaps and all of the MLS clubs. How will the Whitecaps use it? How will other clubs use it? I think people listening to this will probably guess how the Whitecaps might use it. They're going to think, oh, they'll go for the cheaper option. They won't go for the 3 DPs. They'll go for the 4 under 22 players. But don't be so sure about that, because again, in the chat that we had with Axel and Quinn Thompson, who will come to Quinn shortly, on Saturday before the game, their options, Felipe, are wide open. And a lot is going to be dictated by what players are available. And you don't want to just add a DP now that isn't going to be a fit for your team next season. You've got to think long term. So if it's not a DP that's already on your radar, you don't want to just suddenly go out and grab a third DP just because you can. But the third DP spot has always been in play for the Whitecaps, so you would think they will have some possible targets nailed down. The flip side of that, though, is do they want to go young? Do they want to go with the under 22 players and have 4 of them get an extra GAM that could be used to bring an experienced player in from within the league in a big trade? Chouanier from Montreal, for example, just to throw his name out there again. Well, and with possibly Ryan's injury, we don't know how bad, and what we've just said could be a perfect addition if Montreal want to let him go. So obviously, a lot is going to be dictated about who's available, who moves on, what the situation is. How would you like them to use this new model? Would you want to go 3 and 3 or the 2 and 4?
I feel like the obvious answer is obviously 3 and 3 because, people see the designated player position and they see what players have been DPs across the league. You think of obviously Messi, Suarez, you think of, the first one, David Beckham, you think of Gareth Bale, even Denny Bouanga. You see superstars and you think, well, that's what I want on the team. I want superstars. But the DP really is nothing more than just a kind of title, because anybody could be a DP. It does not guarantee success. It does not necessarily guarantee, quality. We've seen at times that players become DPs, even though they might not be quote unquote DP worthy because of financial reasons. Toronto
well,
FC
we've seen the DPs we've brought in here over the years as well, and there's been a lot of busts in there.
Yeah, and you even see like Toronto FC for a while, they put Jonathan Osorio as a DP, not because he wanted to be a DP, not because maybe you would say he is a DP, but because of financial reasons. So DP is a tag for players that really doesn't necessarily mean too much of, I guess beyond the expectations that we've seen because of the examples before. But because of those examples, it also comes with a lot of weight on the players' shoulders. And we saw Sergio Cordova last season not be able to really maybe handle the pressures of being a DP because of his injury and because of, his mentality. And that's probably why some of the factors that led to him leaving last season, halfway through the season. So I feel like unless they find a really, really good player that they can only get through DP money to bring in, that would be the reason. But if not, I mean, under 22 initiative is basically saying, hey, you can have a young DP. You can have four young DPs because that's what, under 22 initiatives basically are. It's similar rules to sort of the designated player rules in terms of you can kind of not have them charge against a salary cap as well, or for a minimum fee for like I think it's like what, like 150,000 or something like that. It's quite not quite that much. So you can bring in some really, really good young players.
Mhm.
You look at Redondo at Miami, he's a fantastic player and he's a U22 initiative as well. That you can bring in and still improve the squad. So I don't know if I really would choose one model over the other without understanding what players are available. And I think that's
Yeah.
the same thing that the Whitecaps are kind of waiting for. They don't really care that much about this model or that model. Obviously, they have a deadline that they have to meet. I think they have to choose by
Yeah.
August 14th, right?
August 14th. And that's for this season. It's like I'd rather they don't rush into something
Hmm.
that proves to be a mistake, and then you can't offload your mistake, which we've had issues with before. It's like if just now they don't pull the trigger on that third DP, but they add that third DP and go for that model for 2025, totally fine by that. And the club have said they're open to a third DP if he is the Ryan Gauld, Andres Kubis quality that will make a difference to the team. So they've no doubts about that. They know the perception. They know folk will be saying, "Oh, not an ambitious club. They don't spend money, etc., etc." But Axel's made it very clear that the club has a philosophy. They've got a recruitment model, and that everyone at the club knows that that is their model. Throughout MLS, people know that that is their model, and they won't shy away from that unless there's a special player that they can make a move for that will change that model.
Yeah, and I feel like some people, especially on the internet,
Mm.
like to take that and twist it into, oh, the Whitecaps never show ambition
Hmm.
because they're not making the flashy signings. And I think, there might be some truth in that. I can understand people's frustrations, but at the same time, everyone loves to be an armchair GM and pretend like they're playing Football Manager or FIFA, but life doesn't work that way. The actual system doesn't work like this, especially in MLS where there are such unique rules for roster
Oh,
composition that you could spend hours and hours and hours studying and still not understand it. That I feel like, the Whitecaps have, like you mentioned, a philosophy that works, and there's a lot of complex nuances in their system that they, for many reasons, can't disclose. And so for fans and even for us, we're not fully privy to
mhm.
what their process is for identifying, locating and bringing in talent. So obviously, if it's because that, if they haven't been able to bring in that third DP is because they haven't found the right piece, especially when you consider that not only is the sort of sporting side like this, but also you have a coach that plays a very highly complex system that takes a lot of, if you haven't played in that kind of system like that, it takes a lot of time to learn. You want to bring in players that you feel like not only are good players, but that fit in this very highly complex system. So it's almost twofold that they have to go through these sort of two very, rich, not restrictions, but sort of kind of like criteria to be able to then go to like, oh yeah, this is a player that we can sign and we can trust that they can be
Mhm.
effective. And that's just, those two things. There's also off the pitch of like, are they willing to relocate? There's international or immigration factors as well. Like there's so much that goes into signing a player
Yeah, because
in the
like
MLS.
we know how wonderful Vancouver is to live. But there have been players that's come here not settled for various reasons. You've had a player in the past like Diber Sabo that took ages to get his family here, and that's upsetting. So it's like there's more factors in play, and I think you just have to trust the process, for want of a better phrase. The thing is, if they don't make the playoffs, say, or they go out in a play-in game or something like that, and they haven't added a DP, they are going to leave themselves open for huge criticism
Yeah.
and lack of ambition and all that stuff. And I think they're aware of that. And the man that's kind of now at the head of a lot of these decisions is 28-year-old Vancouver native Quinn Thompson, who was officially named on Saturday as the club's new technical director. Now, in reality, he's been kind of doing this job for a while, working hand in hand, side by side with Axel. And it's going to take a lot of the weight off Axel Schuster and all the hats that he wears at the moment as well. Thompson will be the youngest TD in the league, and he comes from a data analytics background. He's spent time with the Whitecaps before, then went to MLS headquarters where he was dealing with the player side of things, and now came back to the Whitecaps and is now in the TD role. And I've never spoken to him before Saturday, and just listening to him, talks a lot of sense, talks a good game. You understand where he's coming from, the decisions that he's making. He said at any time they've got a board with over 800 players' names on it.
It's a pretty big board.
Yeah, I'll give you the list of them all just now. So, in alphabetical order. No. This is why our podcast is so long. But I would love to see that list. You can imagine that they're probably split into realistic, ideal, dreams, far-fetched. But you never know. So, I mean, they are doing a lot of work, and it's like there's a lot of work involved. And who knows how they will approach this? One player that has been very heavily linked is one of your countrymen, Felipe. 20-year-old Colombian defender or wing back. I'm not sure if he can play both. I'm assuming he can play both. Edier Ocampo. Not a player I know anything about, but 12 appearances for Colombia's under-20 team. He's emerged as a promising talent at Atlético Nacional, so obviously one of the top clubs in Colombia. He's played right back for them, and 57 games so far he's played, up to the age of 20, which in itself is quite good experience for a young guy. I always remember speaking to Daniel Henry in the past and talking about experienced players, and he had said, well, experience isn't just how old you are. It's what you've done up to that age. Because you could be a 25-year-old that's hardly played, or you could be a 20-year-old like Ocampo that's got nearly 60 games under his belt of first-team football.
Yeah. And just looking at his profile, he looks like he's a player that has gotten a lot of experience out in Colombia. And like the Colombian First League is not like an easy league to break into. It's you know, as somebody from there, it's tough to be able to break in there because it's like, for those that watch Colombia, it's a very physical league. It's a very action-packed league that is constantly attack. So to be a defender
and the
in
fans
there,
as well with the opposition players.
Yes. So there's he's sort of hardened already at 20 years of age.
But I mean, he looks like a great prospect. And I love Colombian players in MLS. I think they really thrive over the years. There's been so many that's done so well. But I don't see how he fits into this current team unless he can play wing back, or we switch to a flat back four.
I feel like because he has played right back and also right wing at times for Atlético Nacional, that the fact that he's very, like, I've seen a couple clips of him, the fact that he's very quick and he's tricky and he brings a bit of that directness that, again, we've been lacking a bit in the team. And, he's not afraid to go one-on-one with your player and take him on. I feel like that's sort of what the Whitecaps are looking for. And they've clearly, I think, seen enough, not only in terms of his physical and his sort of, his bravery, but in terms of some of his technical skills, that they feel pretty confident that they'll be able to fashion him into a sort of, a right wing back. And then if they do get a right wing back, which again was the positions I said that they needed, then if he succeeds, you have a really good pairing of Edier Ocampo, and then you also have Sam Adekugbe on the left. And then for, if you have Ali Ahmed could potentially be further up the pitch and playing alongside Brian White and Ryan Gauld, and he could be the answer to bringing a bit more pace into the attack, which I've said before since last season, that Ali Ahmed could be the answer for that kind of pace in behind. If he just works a little bit more on his final product, then I think he could be really special for them there. So I think he could be a welcome addition for the Whitecaps. I mean, I'll be happy to have another Colombian at the club. I know myself and Sebastian Pereira will probably get along pretty well with them to be able to bring him in. So,
Yeah.
from a personal point of view, I'm very excited. But yeah, from, a more kind of technical point of view, I think he would be a good addition.
And he'd be one of the guys that would come in as an under-22 initiative player, you would imagine. And I mean, the club's been like non-committal on the rumours, and usually when they don't say anything, there's smoke to that, and then when there isn't, they come out and they say that there's not. So I mean, I think we can expect that to get over the line sooner rather than later. I guess we'll just have to keep our ear to the ground for any other transfer rumours just now. But let us know how you think the Whitecaps should go with this new model. Are you concerned if they don't add a third DP in this window? Or is it all about getting the right player and the right fit? And of course, depending on who moves on, will determine as to where they need to strengthen. But that is it for the Whitecaps chat. We've got a lot more football chat to come, though, as we have some quick fire chats from everything from League One to the national teams in the next part. And we'll be back with that after the latest song from our album of the month.
Hey, I am Axel Schuster, and I'm listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio, 101.9 FM. Brought to you in partnership with recoveryfamilylaw.ca. And kicking off this part, it's our song from our album of the month for July here at AFTN, 1992's self-titled 12-inch collection from Cork band The Frank and Walters. That's the first track on the album and also the first single that the band released, and that was Daisy Chain. And we've got one more song to come from the band in next week's show, and it ties in with the Wrexham match that is coming up on Saturday, which is primarily why I picked this album really for the whole month. But it's a good album. Hope you've enjoyed it so far. Go and check out all of their other stuff, their later stuff, in all the usual places. The band still going strong today. So we're going to talk about a variety of things in this part of the show. And we're going to kick things off by looking at League One BC. The regular season came to a close this past weekend. The semi-finals are all set. And on the women's side, finishing first in the regular season, booking their place in August's interprovincial championship game out in Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton, was Vancouver Whitecaps Girls Elite. An undefeated season, 10 wins and 2 draws, and they finished the regular season with the second of the draws, a 0-0 result out at Kamloops against Rivers on Saturday afternoon. And it was a bit of a new look Whitecaps roster as well, with an eye to the playoffs, an eye to the CONCACAF Champions Cup game that is coming up down in El Salvador in August, and hopefully then the tournament to come, as the Whitecaps made 6 additions to their roster, officially announced today. 5 of them did make their appearances in the game at the weekend. And the 6 players they've added, a wealth of experience. 2 goalkeepers, 21-year-old Dakota Beckett, who's been playing with UBC. I've seen a lot of her in recent years. She's excellent. 24-year-old Morgan McCaslin, who's from Ontario. They've added a 30-year-old defender, Brianne Reid, who's got 8 years of professional experience under her belt. Josie Longhurst, an English midfielder who represents Wales at national team level. She's a 22-year-old and has been playing with Reading in the Women's Championship over in England. 23-year-old from Quebec, Jessica Di Filippo, who folk are very excited by that addition. She's been playing in Spain professionally and over in Germany as well. And Jordan Ziff from California, 26-year-old forward who has played for Brazilian club Santos and was the first American to score a goal in the Campeonato Brasileiro. So she's also spent time in Finland and Puerto Rico. So a lot of good experience, Felipe, that the Whitecaps are adding, not just for this League One playoff run and the interprovincials, but already starting to build that squad with a look for next year. And it's kind of an open audition for these players. Show us you deserve to be in the NSL team next year.
That's, I think, for me, the biggest thing that I got from this is that these are early moves from the Whitecaps, sort of looking beyond just League One BC and thinking this is where we're going to start to test out what our squad might look like for the debut of NSL next season. And yeah, you look at the experience, especially, Brianne Reid, she was 30 and she played in Portugal, she played in the NWSL, she played in Sweden. Like, she's 8 years of professional experience. You don't bring that kind of player in for just League One BC and interprovincial, especially with how well, the team is doing without them. They've, they walk the league, and they are probably going to do quite well in the interprovincial. So this is definitely with an eye on NSL, bringing some players in and probably saying, hey, if you do well in this rest of the season, and including the CONCACAF Champions Cup, then you might have done enough to earn a contract for the NSL, which is probably what a lot of these players are looking for.
Yeah.
And I think that it also helps the younger players, because evidently they're good enough, maybe more than good enough, to be in the League One BC environment. And this is going to help them, push them to be prepared to be, professionals in the professional league in NSL as well. So I think all around this is, really good signings for the Whitecaps. And it kind of is giving me that giddiness, because this is the first, real move on the player side that kind of surrounds this Whitecaps team that I guess is yet to be named, because I know it's not going to be the Whitecaps. This future Vancouver team that is affiliated with the Whitecaps that is going to pop up in 2025. So yeah, for the folks that are really excited for that team, this is the first proper bit of news that's going to hopefully excite you.
Yeah, and they got their first minutes against Rivers at the weekend, and yeah, they didn't score, whereas the young girls had been scoring, but they're still finding their chemistry. And it's important that they get this now for the interprovincials to get the spot for next year for the Vancouver team, but also for this game down in El Salvador, because they know they can host Portland Thorns and San Diego Wave here in Vancouver if they get through to the group stage. And then you'll see more additions coming as well. Because for anyone that is unaware, the League One team, the graduating senior players moved on at the end of June, first week of July. So they've lost 12 players that have been performing the last 2 years for this League One team. So the League One team at the moment is 14 to 17-year-olds. And you can't throw them down in a Champions Cup game without some experienced heads there. So it's a very good mix. The two goalkeepers that they're left with just now are 15 years old, and they've been playing all season, and then the backup's 14. So they've needed to add these two experienced goalkeepers. So, I mean, that's exciting. And if you want to get your first look of these women, you can get along to Thunderbird Stadium Friday night, the 26th. So it's a 6 o'clock kickoff for the semi-final. It's the Whitecaps taking on TSS Rovers. The second semi-final is in Cloverdale on Sunday, 2 o'clock kickoff, as Unity host Burnaby. And before that, there's also a screening at the stadium of the women's game at the Olympics as well. So you can get out to that. On the men's side, TSS Rovers have wrapped up, as we mentioned in the last show, of the League One regular season title and booked their place in next year's Canadian Championship. But the playoffs get underway Friday night, 7 o'clock kickoff it is now at Swangard, as TSS Rovers will be taking on Harbourside from Nanaimo, that got a big win over TSS on Saturday, 3-0, that clinched their first ever playoff spot. So that means a lot to that Nanaimo side. Another first-timer in the playoffs is Altitude from North Van, and they are not only in it for the first time, they are hosting their first ever playoff game, 1 o'clock on Sunday at Kinsman Field, as they host Vancouver Whitecaps. I will have the call for both of the men's semi-finals. Gideon Hill will have the call for both the women's games. We decided to keep it that we both did the own thing, just because everything is overlapping. So if you can't make it along, which I highly recommend you do, get along and watch the YouTube stream. Now, talking of League One and League One players and TSS, we'll turn our attention to the CPL now, because big news today, Felipe, as Pacific FC announced their latest signing, and it's a former TSS Rover, their leading scorer for this season with 4 goals. Overall, he's got 6 goals for TSS Rovers in 3 seasons, although last year he was only able to play 10 minutes due to some family stuff, unfortunately. But Devin Ahay has made the move. SFU Red Leafs alumni. He's the GNAC Player of the Year, coming off an absolutely fantastic senior season with the Red Leafs. And for anyone that doesn't know, Devin Ahay grew up playing soccer and football, the American-Canadian throwball kind. And he started off at SFU on their football team, but soccer is his first love, and he made the switch to them, and he hasn't looked back since. So it's a great addition for Pacific, Felipe, and it's great to see them send a local guy as well, and a guy that's earned that deal by his performances in League One.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we will want to see from the league, is to give them, the local teams give opportunities to the local guys to play and to develop and to grow, especially when they've been performing well. I mean, I'm pretty sure he was the guy that got the assist for the Rovers when they faced Pacific in the Canadian Championship.
He was indeed. He played the ball through to Michael Hennessy, because they're former SFU guys, so they've got that. They kind of got that Ryan Gauld, Brian White chemistry, as they know exactly where the other one's going to be.
So clearly he impressed Pacific in that match, and yeah, great for him to get that opportunity. I think that it's a good piece of news after a little bit of the lukewarm reception on Pacific opening academies in Mexico, because a lot of people were wondering why opening in Mexico and not in
Yeah.
in Canada when the whole point is growing and cultivating Canadian talent. So I think
I
this.
saw a lot of the criticism they got for that, but I think folk have not understood how much investment Pacific also do on the island. This is just expanding their horizons. I do admit when I saw it, I was like, that's a bit weird. But
Hmm.
if they uncover the next Guerrero Diaz, no one's going to be complaining then. But they do invest a lot on the island.
No, they do. And again, I think that Mexico has a wealth of talent, and the CPL, as much as it is for growing Canadian talent, and as much as that should be the goal overall, it is a professional league that is looking for quality players to join from wherever parts of the world. And it's not just, players that might be, I think a lot of players are kind of journeymen that get to the league. I think the CPL wants to cultivate young players from not just Canada, but from all over the world. And I think Mexico, now that there's a lot more ties between the CPL and Mexico, obviously the new owners, the Pascual brothers in New York, and they had a little bit of a mini tournament as well in Mexico with some teams. I think that's probably on par with the relations between Mexico and the CPL. But I do really like that they signed Devin, because it shows that they don't have to look that far out to help them with their goal scoring woes, because obviously they are struggling to score goals right now. And so hopefully we can see him kind of have an impact in the way that the French player from Saint Laurent that got signed to Valor. I think
Mm.
his name is Mla. I forget if it was his first name. I think Sebastian Mla. He scored for Valor this past match week in the game against Ottawa. And it was his first goal for the club after being signed from CS Saint Laurent earlier in the month. So maybe, for Devin, it's another opportunity for him to kind of follow in those footsteps. But I think, yeah, I think the league has to give more opportunity to the league, to the CPL, to give more opportunities for League One players, regardless of the age. I feel like there's a sentiment, especially with the comments that Jesse Marsh made about, we got to identify young players. Well, there's also room for some really good, talented players that might be a little bit older,
Yes.
25, 26, 27. It shouldn't really matter how old they are if they are good players that are showcasing their skills. So I think, for the group of people that defend that side of the argument, I think this is a really good signing for them too.
Well, the thing, I mean, that really pleases me as well because, like, Devon's 24, and for anyone that doesn't know him, he's a 6'1" forward. He's had 3 years at TSS, 4 years at SFU, 46 games played, 15 goals and 11 assists. Now, he's a player that has got better and better as the seasons went on. And in his senior year, that was his standout year. He had 9 goals and 9 assists in 18 appearances. So 1 goal contribution per game is what he had. Now he had trials this off season with York United,
Hmm.
and Martin Nash was very high on him and had said, "Haven't got room in my roster just now, but I'll keep an eye on you in the League One season with a look to bringing you in the summer." And then Nashi was out the door. And I was like, oh, I wonder what that's going to mean for Devon now. Because I know Devon was exploring possible trials over in Europe and his agents were looking to set things up there. He's really in the best form of his life just now. And he's played for BB5 United and VMSL, obviously a lower level than League One, but was banging the goals in there as well. Now, the interesting thing is he played for TSS in the Canadian Championship. So I'm presuming that he's cap tied for the Whitecaps second leg because he's already played in the competition for another team.
I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, you might be right. I don't know if those. I know that's a rule in most competitions,
Yeah. So I
but I
don't
don't
know
know
if
if that's
we're different.
specifically a rule in the
I just
Canadian.
thought of it just now as I was doing my preamble, and then as you were talking, I was away to mention, oh, he can play against the Whitecaps, and I was like, wait a minute, can he? Because they need help up front, which he will bring, but that might not bring the help to them in the Canadian Championship. So I'll check that out.
Yeah, I think that especially if he does start to perform well now, like if he comes
Yeah,
in and starts to score a couple of goals and alleviates some of those goal scoring woes that the Pacific are suffering from, it'll be a really gutting for both him and the team if he can't play against the Whitecaps in what is probably going to be their biggest game of the season at that point.
yeah. I'm having a chat with Devin this week for the next podcast, so I'll find out either from that or before that, and we'll kind of cover that with Devin. But delighted for him, delighted to see League One talent moving on. That is the whole purpose of the league. We talked about Pacific with their Mexican academies. There's a big void in League One just now with the Highlanders folding. I would love Pacific to step up and put in, say, a Pacific FC 2 team in League One. And on the
Hmm.
women's side, have a partnership with Vancouver Island Wave and get teams back in Victoria. I know the league want to get back into Victoria as soon as possible, and we'll see what happens. I'm talking about the CPL. Obviously, they are always said they're keen to get a team back in Edmonton as soon as possible. Edmonton Scottish have just wrapped up the Canadian Championship berth for League One Alberta.
Hmm.
And their strips, incidentally, are absolutely magnificent. I keep meaning to get hold of Jeff Powless to see how I can get hold of one. They're tartan stuff and they're tremendous. So you're going to have Edmonton Scottish in the Canadian Championship next year. Let's hope that the open draw, as I'm doing in inverted quotes, pitches them against Cavalry, and you get another Cavalry Edmonton rivalry started.
That would be amazing, especially for the fans in Alberta because yeah, it's been a little lacking ever since FC Edmonton folded. So yeah, if they can do well and be drawn against Cavalry, then that'll be a tasty little match for Cavalry and for the Scottish.
Yeah, so that's the berth at the moment in Quebec and Ontario is still up for grabs. It's all but certain Laval are going to get the Quebec one, but the Ontario spot is really going to
Wide
go down to
open.
the wire, so that's going to be exciting. The CPL, Pacific didn't play this weekend. There was 4 matches this weekend, and Pacific weren't one of them, and that's what you were mentioning earlier.
Hmm.
Really weird because it was like Thursday, Saturday, and 2 on Sunday, and like trying to keep track as to what games are happening when. And I almost missed the Wanderers Valor one on Thursday because I didn't know what was happening. And it's only when I got the email with the starting lineups that was like, what? So what Wanderers have turned things around a little bit there with the 3-1 win.
Yeah, no, Wanderers have been turning around. It was a good match for the Wanderers there. Weird again because Valor had to play twice this weekend.
Yeah.
They played on Thursday and then they played was it yesterday? I'm getting lost in
Yeah,
the
yeah. They played Sunday 2-2 draw with Atletico. A great performance from them against Atletico, where they just couldn't hold on to the lead, but at least they held on and grabbed a point in the end. And I think obviously this is for travel, so they're doing the Halifax and Ottawa trips just in the space of 4 days to keep the costs down. So I mean that makes sense, but also very grueling because of the weather conditions out there.
Yeah, because of the weather and because of the quick turnaround. Like that was more impressive than it initially gave off for Valor because of the conditions and because of the fact that they had to play 2 games in 5 days.
Mm,
It was a really good match against Ottawa of all teams in Ottawa as well. I was looking at that match and thinking Ottawa were going to, well, maybe not run riot like in the Can Champ, but still it was going to be a relatively straightforward win. But no, Valor
yeah.
did
I,
really well to bounce back after the 3-1 loss against Wanderers to be able to come back and get that valuable point.
I think it also shows how Phil DeSantis and Patrice Geyser, to be fair to him as well, have turned their teams around the last few weeks after those horrible results in the Canadian Championship. I mean, for Valor, that would have been so easy just to be like, I don't know how we come back from that.
Yeah.
And they're showing signs of life. I think it's still tough for either of them to make the playoffs, but I mean, you never know.
Yeah, I mean we're almost halfway through the season. We're more than halfway through the season because of the
Yeah,
weird scheduling. Halifax has only played 13, so they're not at
yeah,
their halfway point yet. But most of the other teams have played either 14 or 15. So it's kind of the halfway point. It's around the halfway point of the season.
yeah. Because
And
VFC had their 15th game on Saturday.
yeah, VFC had their 15th game on Saturday, while Halifax only had their 13th game.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit confusing, but Valor are 8 points behind Pacific, having played a game more. So I think it's really tough for Valor. I think for Halifax, it's a little bit easier because they're only 6 points behind Pacific with a game in hand. So if they win that game in hand, they start to go on a little bit of a roll. I mean, they've won 3 out of their last 4 games.
Mm. And we know they're strong at home.
And exactly, we know that they're quite strong at home, and it might be a bit of a shock if they can get some results, going their way. I mean, if you look at their next few matches, it's quite tough because they out of their next 5, only one of them is at home, so they're gonna have to do quite well to be able to
Well,
get
yeah,
points
because
off
they
of the
have
likes of
struggled on the road.
yeah, and they have to face Forge twice, then
Oh,
Calvary, then Valor, so. If they can get through that with, some good points in the board, then I think they'll be looking to climb up the table and get
mm.
into those playoff positions. But right now, it's quite tough, I think, for the Wanderers given the schedule that they have. But yeah, overall, it's been a surprise for them to finally get going. They finally got wins, and now they're 3 out of the last 4. And I think that's for Patrice Geyser. He'll be looking to take this momentum into this really difficult period so that they can, try to sneak into that 5th position.
Well, it's so tight just now, and it looks like a good team is going to miss out of the playoffs this year, just with how tight it is and just how good everyone is really just now. I mean, Ottawa and York at the top, and then could we see Cavalry or Forge miss the playoffs for the first time? You feel with Forge they're always going to do enough to get in. Vancouver FC been up and down. Now you were at that game on Saturday. I couldn't get to it because I was meant to be commentating in North Van, but because of the accident on the Lions Gate, it was gridlock going over the Ironworkers, and I couldn't even get to the game to commentate. So I got neither game taken in on Saturday afternoon for me. But it was a 1-0 draw at home to York United. Mo Babuli put York ahead in the 46th minute before Diaz, 93rd minute, equaliser. 16-year-old Grady McDonnell with the assist as well. And I think a point was a fair result, but that was a good point for VFC in the end.
Yeah, I mean, this obviously disappointing because I'm sure they wanted the win. Obviously, after their really tough back-to-back home defeats where they conceded 7 goals and scored 0, they wanted to bounce back a bit better. I don't know if did you hear about what happened at halftime? Just the absolute farcical thing that happened for Vancouver FC, where
No?
what happened, and it wasn't just Vancouver FC, but they suffered more from it. Basically, 2 players on the pitch, one for York United and one for Vancouver FC, weren't wearing the appropriate attire. I think it was the shorts or the underwear, where one player for York United, Juan Cordova, had to come off the pitch mid-game. They were still playing, put towels around him, and either switch his shorts or switch his underwear.
What?
And get back on the pitch, which was very odd. But then, even worse for Vancouver FC, they had made a substitution where Mickey Cantav came off for Moses Dyer. Cantav, I'm pretty sure, stayed in the locker room, didn't come out. But Moses Dyer, I believe it was, I haven't heard official word yet, had the wrong shorts. And so he wasn't allowed to go on. So he came, got told off, had the match kicked off. He had to run back to the locker room, and because the locker room isn't anymore like right on the corner, right?
Yeah.
It's in LEC. He had to run back to LEC and then run back towards the pitch And during that time, when Vancouver FC only had 10 men, clearly they were thrown off because they were like, what the hell happened to Moses Dyer? York United scored within 2 minutes before
Oh,
Dyer
I
even
didn't
got
know
on
they
the
were
pitch.
down a man at that point because I had the sound down when I had it on because I was watching that and the League One games at the same time.
Yeah,
Oh
that was what
man.
happened. It was farcical. It was like I'm sure the kit man got a scolding because of it.
Oh.
Because
Oh
it
yeah,
it
Afshin will not be happy.
no, and I have yet to hear the post match. But I'm assuming that yeah, it must have been quite frustrating. You know, Callum Irving lost his mind, which is very weird for me because he's usually
Mm.
composed. But he was yelling, "What are we doing?" when they conceded that goal. Like, why aren't we ready? Because it was just like they suffered for it, and then it was like 50-50 in the first half. It could have gone either way. And then just because of a simple mistake like that, they conceded a goal. They weren't mentally prepared for that. And then it almost cost them the game. It took them
Mm.
until the 90 what third minute to score that equalizer. So like it could have been even worse for Vancouver FC had they lost the match because of that reason.
Well, with how tight everything is, it's like every single point is vital just now. And it's like dropping 2 points like that, or if they hadn't even taken a point, oh boy. Talking about games you might look back on come the end of the season. The last game was yesterday, which was Cavalry and Forge. Another close game between the old rivals. Cavalry's ninth draw in 15 games. Insane. They just
Yeah,
can't find a way to win.
it's the case of like I've talked about it on my own podcast. They just lack that spark in the attack. I don't think it's quite as bad as Pacific, but they have a good forward in Tobias Warchowski, but he's sort of doing it all alone. He's not really getting all that much help, and you got to think about obviously, you know, Willie Akio got a season-ending injury. You have Sergio Camargo who's been injured, Ali Musi who's been injured. So a lot of their, you know, top players, you could say that probably would be the three behind Wachowski that would start that are all gone. So you can understand why they're struggling a little bit, but at the same time, it's just they can't get, you know, the ball across the line. They can't get the goals, even though they have plenty of opportunities. They missed a huge chance in that game against Forge. They dominated possession. You know, Forge had a few more shots, but overall, it felt like Cavalry probably might have edged that to be the team that deserved to win. But because they're lacking, you know, in the forward department, even Tobias Wachowski missed the I think it was missed the penalty, right? That
Yeah, it was a great save because not only
yeah,
was it safe, he held on to it, and you don't see
yeah,
that very often.
exactly. Fantastic save from Chris Colongo, who's only 22 years old
Yeah,
and stepped in.
I thought
uh
he was a bit shaky at first, but he's really started to come into his own.
Yeah, no, he's been superb for them, and he's really done well to replace Tristan Henry. Like those are big shoes to fill
Yeah,
at Forge, and he's took it in stride. So fantastic for him, and another piece to add to his resume with that great penalty save. But yeah, I think on paper, Cavalry deserved to win that one. But you know, it's with their form right now, they can't help but draw. And then Forge got that red card, and it made for a really cagey last 10 or so minutes. But in the end, Cavalry couldn't find it, and Forge a big point for them because, like you mentioned, it's so tight. There's only 4 points between them
Mhm.
after this match, and that 4 points is the difference between third and sixth.
Yeah.
And Forge are only a point behind York United, who are in second. So only 5 points between second and sixth. That's so tight.
It's like one of those teams is just going to be gutted come the end of the season. I said last year I felt that was probably the strongest season in CPL. This is shaping up fantastically. If you haven't taken the games in, if you haven't got out to Langley or to Langford, go and take in some of these games. It's been some tremendous entertainment. Not all the time. Some of the games have been dire, but you can say that about MLS as well. But it's going to really, really be a good run in. And we'll talk about Felipe's podcast. If I give it a plug now, if you want to follow the CPL this season, yours is the podcast to listen to.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, if you're if you're interested in the more of an insight on the league and on the games and on the news and stuff like that, then yeah, you can give a little listen to Coast FC, as we always focus on not just the CPL but also the Canadian Championship when CPL is involved. And yeah, we love to not only talk about the games, but do a couple special episodes. Once Halifax finally plays their 14th game, we will do our mid-season team of the season. I've been waiting for weeks to do that, but I still can't do it because not every team has played their 14 matches. But we'll have a couple more, special episodes, hopefully some interviews down the line, as well as we look to give a more variance in the content. But yeah, if you're interested in the CPL, give Coast to Coast a listen.
Highly recommended. I mean, that's pretty much it for the chat and the football talk. I do want to talk quickly about a couple of national team things. So the Canada's under-20s men's side are taking part in the CONCACAF Championships at the moment. First game was on Saturday night. I managed to PVR it and avoid the result, so I came home and watched it. Very hard-fought draw against Honduras, and Honduras just grabbing the equaliser in the death throes of the game. Honduras are ranked second in CONCACAF just now, so it's a really, really, really good performance by Canada. I don't know how much of it, or if any of it, if you actually saw.
I saw something because it was around the same time as it was so busy on Saturday with Vancouver
Yeah.
FC and with the Whitecaps. I saw some things. I saw the fantastic free kick from Santiago Lopez, who is
Yes.
quickly becoming one of the hottest prospects that Canada could potentially have on their side. I know he's also eligible for Mexico. I think that he's quickly showing that he's somebody that you want to keep in the program and maybe cap tie as soon as possible, in the same way as Luc de
Yeah.
Fougerolles. And then our very own Miles Morgan got the second
Yes.
goal as well. And I didn't get to see that goal because there was no highlight for it for some reason. Yeah, neither One
Oh,
Soccer nor CONCACAF got a clip of it, so I wasn't able to see it. But I'm glad that
that's
he got a
weird
goal.
because it was definitely in the broadcast because I PVR'd the game. That's really weird.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't really know what occurred, but glad to see him score a goal because he's been doing really well for the twos so far
Yeah.
this season. And yeah, it feels like that was a game that it was a hard fought draw, but obviously a little bittersweet that they couldn't hold on for
Yeah.
for 3 points.
It was 2-2 in the end, I should mention as well, with the equaliser coming 4 minutes into stoppage time for Honduras. Still a very good point. Two Whitecaps started in the midfield, Miles Morgan and Javain Badwall. You also had players on the bench from the Whitecaps as well and around CPL. Now, Christian Greco-Taylor from Pacific started the game, and James Cameron from Vancouver FC came on as well. So yeah, it's looking at a good team just now. Looking forward to seeing how the rest of the group games go. El Salvador and Dominican Republic are the other two teams in the group, and the next games go on Tuesday, depending on when you listen to this. You can watch those games on One Soccer. So good luck to the lads for the rest of that one. One thing I want to say though is, I mean, you have seen just even from the highlights alone, the state of the pitch in Mexico was an absolute disgrace. Now, folk make so much about us playing on artificial surfaces here. I'd rather have that than the quagmire that they were trying to play football on there, which I know goes against my old stereotypical old-fashioned football fan thing, but that pitch was a disgrace.
Yeah, no, just looking at the photos of it and looking at the videos of it, I was like, I'm surprised no one got injured on
Yeah.
that pitch because you could have easily slipped and slid and pulled something or
Well, there
torn
was a
something.
couple of players went off, and it's like there was some heavy challenges going in as well, as you can imagine, in a game against Honduras. But yeah, it had been raining, obviously, but it was horrible. So good luck to the lads for the rest of this one. Hopefully catch up with some of the Whitecaps guys when they get back from the tournament as well. And then the Olympics, of course, kicks off this week. We're going to have Har on the show next week, so she'll chat a little bit about the women's games. There'll be two games played because they're coming thick and fast. First game on Thursday, second game on Sunday for the women. Just what are you expecting from this tournament, Felipe?
I think it's going to be a tournament where Canada will really have to sort of, it feels tough to say prove themselves again, because they are the reigning gold medal winners. But because of what happened at the Women's World Cup, because it's of the sort of changing of the guard, Kristen Sinclair is not there, Sophie Schmidt's not
Mm.
there. It's kind of again an opportunity for Bev to kind of show, Canada are still a really, really strong team, and put past all the drama that happened in the last, between 2021 and now with the federation and everything. I think that it's going to be a great opportunity to show that they still have a lot of talent, obviously, a lot of good players that have been performing well. And it's going to be tough because, they have a tough set of games. The opening game
Yeah,
against
very.
yeah, very tough set of games. You have the game against New Zealand,
Mm.
which is going to be a tough match for them. And you just look at all across the the group stage and the teams as well. And the team is like pretty much every team has a shout to go far.
Mhm.
The only team I don't really know all that much about at all is like Zambia. But aside from that,
Mm.
you look at teams that have quality in them, and so it's not going to be easy at all
No. Well, they
for
have the hosts, France, on Sunday. So, I mean, already you've got the crowd against you in that one. And then July 31st, who are you cheering
Colombia.
on? Colombia? Canada?
It's a
A
win-win either
draw
way.
and both go through?
Yeah, I mean that would be my ideal scenario. I don't know if they'll be able to do it, but my ideals, especially with France there.
Yeah.
But my ideal scenario would be to have Colombia and Canada go through, especially since Colombia, have a couple good players of their own. Linda Caicedo,
Well, they were one of the bright lights at the World Cup. Like, they were amazing to watch. I loved all their games.
Yeah, no, just like in the men's team, the women's have a lot of talent and they have a lot of spirit and passion too, which shows through. But yeah, I think looking at some players like Mayra Ramirez, now that she's playing at Chelsea and she's featuring more for them, and Linda Caicedo moved to Real Madrid, so they got a little bit more experience, Colombia. So it's going to be a really good match. I can't wait to tuck into that one on match day.
More football to come. How will we fit it all in the shows? Well, this one's been shorter than usual, but still a little bit longer than I planned. Somehow we've got to 3:22. I don't know how that happened. But we'll finish things off as always with this episode's wavelength. I teased it last week. I'm actually going to play an England song that was brought out for the Euros. Since they didn't win it, it's fine to play it now because they're not so cocky. It's by an actor and a comedian who also has a rap persona. His name is Big Shaq. And this is his song for England at the Euros. Like what?
Shako, Euros 24. All tight, all of the man them, all the ladies, everyone inside. It's a big one. Burstman. I tell them like, if we're gonna win, put it in the box. Saka up top, right side, like what? Palmer up front, freezing, like what? Kane one shot, quick goal, like what? Foden gonna hit top bins, like what? In the up box, bust shots, like what? Been a long time, us man can't flop. Like, what you know about Trippy, yeah? Passing the ball like, yeah. You got no drip, yes, I'm drippy, yeah. Come through fresh like, yeah. Running through the centre like Jude Bellingham. 1-2 pass, that's Jude Bellingham. Ping it in the box, that's Jude Bellingham. Man try stop there, irrelevant. Trent whip it in, that's his element. Guy from the side, he dress elegant. Waistcoat ting just like the president of Ghana. No, Bowen on the wing, just straight bossing them. Can we just win and go Morrison's? Ollie Watkins, you are not stopping him. Too much pace, you are not catching him. If we're gonna win, put it in the box. Saka up top, right side, like what? Palmer up front, freezing, like what? Kane one shot, quick goal, like what? Foden gonna hit top bins, like what? In the up box, bust shots, like what? Been a long time, us man can't flop. Like, in box park with the geezers, Chavers, streamers, leng ones, dealers. It's coming home, praise Jesus. Gonna win and get lit like Grealish. In the back of the net from set pieces. See Eze, he stay ready. He just sharp on the ball like Pele. See the youngest in charge, that's Mainu. On our team, we don't care what they do. Rats on the ball all round, he too cool. Midfield or the up block will get schooled. Gomez on the back line, you won't get through. Stone, Shore and Dunk, you won't get through. Pickford saved your shot, it was doo-doo. Damn. If we're gonna win, put it in the box. Saka up top, right side, like what? Palmer up front, freezing, like what? Kane one shot, quick goal, like what? Foden gonna hit top bins, like what? In the up box, bust shots, like what? Been a long time, us man can't flop. Like. Please don't shake it. Catch him Mbappe, watch him leg it. Walker's on him, please don't beg it. Please don't beg it. Hey, Lukaku getting clamped. Lewandowski getting clamped. Mbappe getting clamped. All of you man, I get clamped. Old tight Ivan Toney, Anthony Gordon, Gallagher, Guehi, Mark, Ramsdale, Wharton. All of the man them, big up yourself. Sterling, Rashford, Sancho, Chili B, Madison, Brampthwaite. Hey, we appreciate you lot differently. Bring it home, innit? Every year it's come on home. Where's the trophy, fam? Bring the thing home, yeah? And don't use the man them as scapegoats. You know who you are. It's one love, one team. It's Big Shako. You don't know the thing.
Big Shaq, like what? It didn't come home. Let's all be grateful for that. But that is it for this episode of the show. Any final thoughts from you, Felipe? Where can folk find your stuff online?
Yeah, you can find my stuff online at FelipeV_FC for both my Twitter and my Instagram handle. Like I mentioned, Coast to Coast FC. That's where you can catch up on all the CPL stuff that I'm working on, as well as, writing things for Northern Tribune. Continuing with the Whitecaps, stuff with AFTN, obviously, and also, writing the match reports, hopefully getting out the second part of the Being Vanni Sartini series in the coming weeks in this break for the second and third part. There are 3 parts because it was a very fruitful interview with him. And then hopefully, many more projects to come as the season keeps on rocking and rolling. And as well, if you're ever in the, Burnaby, Vancouver area and you want to go see some VMMSL action, my team is starting to get underway with preseason, getting some friendlies before the VMSL season starts in September.
Yeah, I am looking forward to the VMSL getting underway. Also, we should note as well, in the Fraser Valley Soccer League, the Whitecaps under-19s playing there during the winter season to prepare for the League One season. And there'll be a new addition in the Fraser Valley Premier this winter season, as Vancouver FC are putting in an under-19 team, part of the pathway for them. So that's good to see as well. You can follow all our stuff on aftn.ca. I'm going to have some League One coverage coming up this week. Check out the commentary over the weekend on YouTube if you can't get out to the games as well. Give us a follow on X, AFTN Canada, and Instagram, AFTN Soccer. And if you're not a subscriber to our extra podcast, you can do so for $30 a year, $3 a month, and help support AFTN and all the work that we do. But until next time, as always, thanks for listening. Take care. Enjoy the feast of football. Mon the Whitecaps and Allez Le Rouge.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.
More than a name, that's what we
AFTN.